You see, the internet was always seen in terms of the telephone industry. And the theory in the telephony world was, no matter what your number is and my number is, I can ring you. That once we actually created this global telephone system, anyone could call anyone. There was no structural blockage. And indeed, the rules and regulations of being telephone carriers tried to enforce that model of universal connectivity. That in theory, your local telephone network knew how to reach every telephone on the planet. There was no structural gap of information. Now these days, when you connect to an internet service provider, you think, and rightly so, that what they're delivering to you is that same universal connectivity. I can reach anyone, anytime from my service provider. And we have a name for that in the internet technology area. It's called the default route. It's called this idea that if I don't have explicit information, I go down the default path out and I will get to where I need to get to. Now, you can't buy default. You can't purchase it. It's not something that's sold. And you don't even know when you've got it. Because when you're an internet service provider, you have a number of ways of collecting connectivity. You might go to a local exchange point and pick up so-called routes or reachability from other people at that same exchange point. You might go to a transit service provider and buy transit from them. And the theory goes that default is actually a market outcome. That what you're doing is, by these incremental actions, you're purchasing connectivity, or swapping and exchanging it, and the end result is you get default. You get to reach everywhere. But I started wondering, and one of the things that made me wonder is in V4 we saw this lack of reliability underneath the surface. 0.2% of connection attempts fail. And I started to wonder, is that because they can't reach me? That the underlying fault is that sometimes the person who received the ad can't get back to my server. Is there a structural break in connectivity? Now, there's a couple of really interesting resources out there on the net, and they're called route collectors. And they pick up the collection of reachability from 50 or 60 different parts of the net simultaneously. So what you've actually got is almost like a rainbow. You've got a collection of different views all bunched up together. So I have a computer, it has some spare time. I started to compute the difference. In other words, some providers can reach some places that other providers can't. And I started analysing that and found that on the whole, for example in the V4 network, it has approximately 600,000 routes. But some folks see 10,000 more routes than others. And it roughly corresponds to around 1.5 million addresses. That there's this little sort of grey area where not everyone can reach everyone else. And then I started to look, is it stable over time? Is this a structural problem or just a protocol blip? It's structural. They really can't. And then you think, hang on a second, if some of my customers can't reach some other parts of the internet, surely they'd be complaining. Surely the network operator would be incented to fix that. And you come to the rather depressing view that they don't know that they're missing. They really don't know. So what is the internet today? Is it a network where everyone can reach everyone else? Or is it a Facebook feeder network, where as long as you can reach Facebook, all problems are solved? And depressingly, I think we're almost in that latter case. That as long as I can deliver to my customers LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, Yahoo, I'm done. I have no other problem to solve. And that to me is a poor network, a network where you can't reach everyone else, where you've either got to get to the tier ones or nothing. I'd much prefer to see an internet that is, like the telephone system, aspired to be, fully internally connected. And that means we actually need to open up and actually understand better what is default and is my service provider giving it to me.